The unexpected heir. A billionaire's second chance, a ruthless, arrogant Chicago real estate mogul celebrating a $500 million deal, sees his past flash before his eyes as he steps out of the hospital. Standing by the entrance, pale and desperate, is his ex-wife, clutching a newborn baby. He thought their failed marriage was a closed chapter, but what happens next is a shocking twist that will forever shatter his carefully constructed world. Hello, viewers. Thanks for being here. Hit that like button and tell us in the comments what you think of this story and where you're watching from. Let's dive in. Chapter 1: The Ghost of the Past. The late afternoon sun of a sharp Chicago autumn glinted unforgivingly off the glass facade of the St. Jude's Medical Center. Elias Thorne, a formidable man of 55, emerged through the automated doors, mechanically adjusting his bespoke Italian tie. The meeting with the hospital board for his latest luxury condo project had been, as usual, a resounding success. His polished Oxford shoes echoed against the marble as he headed toward his sleek, black Rolls-Royce Ghost, parked precisely in the executive area. His driver, Marcus, already had the engine running and the climate control set to the exact temperature Mr. Thorne preferred. Everything in Elias's life operated with that kind of mechanical precision. Optimized routes, exact schedules, and zero emotional clutter. However, something at the main entrance snagged his peripheral vision. A familiar figure stood out against the white columns. Elias's heart hitched in his chest as he recognized the elegant silhouette of Aurora Vance, his ex-wife. She wore a simple navy dress he recalled buying her during their last anniversary, back when they still believed their 12-year marriage could be saved. But she was not alone. In her arms, wrapped in a finely embroidered white blanket, was a baby. Aurora was gently rocking the tiny bundle, her honey-colored eyes, the eyes that had once captivated him, nervously scanning the hospital entrance. When their eyes met, time seemed to halt. Elias felt his feet move automatically towards her, completely ignoring the urgent call vibrating on his custom-made smartphone. Aurora didn't move, but her breathing grew ragged, and the baby in her arms let out a soft whimper that cut the silence like a declaration. "Elias," she whispered when he stopped barely a yard away. Her voice carried the same melodious tone that had won his heart over a decade ago. But now, there was a raw vulnerability mixed with fierce determination. "Aurora, what are you doing here? Who is that?" His words dissolved as he looked closer at the infant. The dark eyes, the shape of the nose, the defined line of the jaw, details he recognized every morning in his own mirror. "This is your son, Elias," she declared, her voice trembling yet firm, as if she had rehearsed the words 1,000 times. "His name is Ben. He's yours." Elias's world tilted. For 12 years, they had desperately tried for children. IVF, expensive treatments, frustrated adoptions, a cycle of hope and disappointment that had hollowed their relationship. "That's impossible," he murmured, though his eyes could not leave the baby's face, which gazed back with unsettling intensity. "We separated 10 months ago, Aurora. The doctors said it was practically—" "Miracles happen, apparently," she cut in with a bitter smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Or perhaps the universe has a cruel sense of humor." Aurora extended a manila folder toward him with her free hand. "Here are all the documents you need. Birth certificate, paternity tests, medical records, everything is in order." Elias took the folder with shaking hands, unable to fully process the seismic event. "Why now? Why didn't you tell me you were pregnant?" Aurora's eyes filled with unshed tears. "Because I thought you'd believe it was another one of my desperate attempts to save us? Because we'd suffered enough with every negative test, every destroyed hope? Because—" her voice broke slightly. because you made it clear your empire was more important than anything we could ever build together." Before Elias could reply, Aurora gently placed the baby in his inexpert arms. Ben was surprisingly light, his warmth seeping through the blanket into Elias's chest. "Take good care of him, Elias," she whispered, kissing the baby's head one last time. "Aurora, wait! You can't just—" But she was already walking away quickly toward a waiting yellow cab. The doors slammed shut with a final sound, and the vehicle vanished into the Chicago traffic, leaving Elias Thorne, the magnate who controlled empires, utterly lost on a hospital sidewalk with an infant in his arms and a world that had just changed forever. Viewers, take a moment. If you were Elias, the ruthless businessman, what would be your first move? Comment below. Do you think he'll step up or crumble under the pressure? Chapter 2. The Crash of the Empire. Marcus, the driver, watched in his rearview mirror as his boss stood motionless on the pavement, holding a gently wriggling bundle. In his 8 years of service, he had never seen the unflappable CEO in such a state of shock. "Mr. Thorne? Sir, are you all right?" Marcus asked, approaching cautiously. Elias blinked. "Marcus, I need you to take me home, immediately." His voice sounded strained, stripped of its usual authority. During the drive to his exclusive Gold Coast mansion, Elias watched the baby sleeping peacefully in his arms. Ben had pink cheeks and breathed with the tranquility of innocence. Every time the baby shifted, Elias's heart pounded, terrified the infant would start crying and he wouldn't know what to do. The mansion, designed for corporate elegance and functionality, held nothing appropriate for a baby. Sharp-edged furniture, unprotected marble staircases, crystal decorations. "Mrs. Gable," Elias yelled for his housekeeper as he entered the grand foyer. "Cancel all my meetings this afternoon and search the internet for what a newborn needs. Buy everything. Immediately." The housekeeper, startled by the baby, gasped. "Good heavens, Mr. Thorne, is that—" "This is Ben, my son," Elias stated, the words feeling alien on his tongue. Mrs. Gable took the wailing child with practiced ease. "He's hungry, sir! We need bottles, diapers, clothes, a bassinet, everything!" While Mrs. Gable tried to soothe Ben, Elias opened the folder. The paternity test showed 99.9% probability. A handwritten letter from Aurora fell to the floor. "Elias, I know this is a shock. Believe me, it was for me too. I found out I was pregnant weeks after signing the divorce papers. I have my reasons for acting this way, reasons I can't explain in a letter. Ben is your son, and he deserves to know his father. I will return when I can. Please, take care of him." Elias felt a strange pang in his chest. He looked at Mrs. Gable, who appeared as lost as he was. The next 2 weeks were a radical transformation. The quiet mansion now echoed with Ben's cries. Elias, accustomed to waking at 6 a.m. refreshed, now dragged himself through the corridors, unshaven and weary. His trophy room was rapidly converted into Ben's nursery, his golden plaques replaced by a changing table and shelves of baby supplies. He discovered that Ben calmed down when Elias recited his business monologues. Every night, the successful mogul found himself explaining complex business strategies to an infant who listened with apparent interest. Elias had learned to change a diaper with the precision he once applied to contracts. His younger sister, Vivian, a child psychologist, visited one afternoon and found Elias on the floor, surrounded by colorful toys, trying to get Ben to grasp a rattle. "My God, Elias! What happened to the Wall Street Journal cover model?" Vivian exclaimed, observing his messy hair and the suspicious stain on his cashmere sweater. "I need help, Vivian. I have no idea what I'm doing," Elias admitted, holding Ben close. "He's adorable, Elias. He has your eyes and Aurora's smile. How do you truly feel about all this?" "Terrified, confused, exhausted, but also I don't know how to explain it. When I look at him, I feel something I've never experienced, like a part of me I didn't know existed has awakened. It's called paternal love, Vivian smiled. And you're handling it better than you think. Tell me, viewers, have you ever experienced a life event that changed all your priorities overnight? Share your stories. Chapter 3. The True Cost of Silence. A month after Ben's arrival, Elias received the call that would change his understanding of the past. Carlos, the private investigator, had news about Aurora. "Mr. Thorne, I found important information about your ex-wife." Carlos's voice sounded cautious. "She's in New York City at the Mount Sinai Hospital, in the cardiology unit." Elias's heart sank. "Cardiology, what's wrong?" "According to my medical sources, she has a congenital heart condition that was severely aggravated by the pregnancy. She's been receiving specialized treatment for months." Carlos slid a photo across the desk, showing Aurora looking visibly thinner and frail. "Why didn't she tell me? We were married for 12 years. "More, sir. I spoke with some old mutual friends. Apparently Mrs. Vance knew about her condition even before the wedding, but never told you. Afraid you'd think she married you for your money and medical security." Elias leaned back, feeling the air knocked out of him. For years, Aurora had carried a devastating secret that explained so much. Doctors had warned her a pregnancy would risk her life. "The pregnancy was truly a miracle," the investigator continued, "but it caused severe complications that require continuous treatment. Mrs. Vance risked her life to bring your son into the world." Elias felt a wave of devastating emotions. Guilt for not knowing her silent suffering, admiration for her courage, and a sudden understanding of why their marriage had struggled. Aurora had faced fears and pain he couldn't even imagine. That night, Elias looked at Ben, who was observing him with the dark eyes inherited from a brave mother. "Your mother is an extraordinary woman, Ben," he whispered, "and I was an idiot for not seeing it." The next day, Elias made a decision. "I'm going to New York," he told Vivian. "Aurora needs to know I'm here for her and Ben. She doesn't have to face this alone anymore." Chapter 4. The Vow of the Second Chance. The flight to New York was a new adventure. Elias, the man who once flew private and expected silence, now found himself soothing a wailing baby in a first-class cabin. He found Aurora in a private room at Mount Sinai. She was pale, tethered to monitors, but reading a book. When she saw him, her book slid to the floor. "Elias, what are you doing here?" "I came to see you," he replied, approaching slowly, "and to bring news of our son." Aurora's eyes instantly filled with tears. "How is Ben? Are you truly taking care of him?" "He is perfectly well, growing, smiling, and keeping me awake every night with his clear opinions on my parenting skills." A faint smile crossed her face. "Aurora," Elias said, his voice heavy with contained emotion, "why didn't you ever tell me about your heart condition?" "Because I didn't want you to worry. Because I didn't want you to marry me out of pity or obligation. I wanted you to love me for who I was, not for the patient I might become." She looked directly into his eyes. "When I conceived Ben, after our separation, it was a complete surprise. The doctors told me I had two options: terminate the pregnancy to save my life, or risk dying to give life to our son. And you chose to risk it," Elias murmured, finally grasping the magnitude of her sacrifice. "It wasn't a choice, Elias. He was our miracle. I couldn't give up on him." Elias spent the next few days in New York, visiting Aurora daily, while Mrs. Gable explored the city with Ben. The emotional healing was more significant than the medical treatment. They talked for hours about their marriage, their mistakes, and the love that had been buried under years of miscommunication. "The doctors say I can go home in 2 weeks," she said one afternoon, "but I'll need constant care for months." "Where do you plan to stay?" Elias asked, already knowing his answer. "I was thinking of renting a small apartment near the hospital for follow-ups." Elias took her hand, noting how fragile it felt. "Aurora, I want you both to come back to Chicago, to the mansion. Elias, we can't just... Hear me out. I'm not suggesting we return to what was. I'm proposing something completely new. We have a son, and we both love him. You need the best medical care, and I can guarantee it. Ben needs both his parents. What are we now, Aurora? She held his gaze. We are the parents of this little miracle. We are two people who loved deeply and made huge mistakes. We are a family that deserves a second chance. Don't forget to subscribe if you are enjoying this story. What promise do you think Elias should make to Aurora this time around? Chapter 5. The $400 million question. 6 months after their return to Chicago, the mansion was a vibrant home. Ben was thriving, and Aurora's health was stable. Elias had established a routine that was once unthinkable. Family breakfast, leaving work by 5 p.m., and weekends reserved for family activities. One morning, his most trusted partner, George, came into Elias's study, finding him checking papers with Ben, sleeping in a bassinet nearby. Elias, we need to talk seriously. The Monterey project is still on the table. It's $400 million, international expansion, your legacy. Ben chose that moment to wake up and cry softly. Elias immediately put down the papers and scooped up his son. My legacy is already here, George, he said, looking into Ben's dark eyes. But Elias, we're talking about becoming the biggest real estate company in all of the Americas. George, my answer is no. This project requires a 2-year commitment abroad. That means missing Ben's first steps, his first real words, probably his first birthday. He walked to the window, Ben now calm in his arms. There are things money can't buy, and I ignored them for far too long. Later that afternoon, Elias found Aurora by the olive tree they had planted during their 2nd anniversary. I rejected George's proposal, he told her. I turned down $400 million. Aurora's surprise was evident. The Elias Thorne I knew rejected a $400 million deal? The biggest opportunity of his career? The Elias Thorne you knew was an idiot who couldn't tell the difference between success and happiness. He took her hand gently. I lost you, and I almost lost the chance to know my son by chasing that very kind of opportunity. I won't make that mistake twice. I have enough money for us to live comfortably for the rest of our lives. What else do I need? A bigger yacht? A house on every continent I'd never have time to enjoy? He smiled, watching Ben try to grab his own feet. I measure my wealth by the depth of my family's happiness. That evening, as Ben slept, Elias asked for Aurora's hand. Aurora, I want to ask you something. I want us to get married again. He presented her with a document. I signed the papers yesterday to transfer 50% of all my assets and companies to your name, regardless of your answer. I want you to have complete financial security to choose freely. If you say yes, it must be because you love me, not because you feel obligated or dependent. Aurora's eyes filled with tears as she looked at him. The man who had rejected an empire to stay with his family was someone she could finally trust with her heart again. Chapter 6. The Real Vows. 3 days later, Aurora met Elias in the garden after Ben was asleep. I've made a decision, she said. I'm listening, Elias said, his heart pounding. First, I'm returning these transfer documents. I don't want them. If we're doing this, we'll be equal partners. She took his hands in hers. Second, my answer is yes. Elias pulled her close, embracing her with a ferocity that contained years of regret and renewed hope. They married in an intimate ceremony under the olive tree in the garden. Ben, now 14 months old, served as their ring bearer, walking determinedly down the path of white rose petals. For their vows, Elias discarded his prepared notes and spoke from the heart. Aurora, 12 years ago, I promised to love you in sickness and in health, but I didn't truly understand what that meant. Today, I promise to love you consciously, choosing you every single day, not out of habit, but by decision. I promise to be your partner, not your savior. And I promise that our family will always be my absolute priority." Aurora replied, tears streaming down her face. "Elias, I promise to love you without trying to change you, because the man you are now is exactly who I need. I promise to be your equal, not your dependent. And I promise we will build a home together filled with real love, not impossible expectations." When they exchanged rings, Ben clapped enthusiastically, filling the air with genuine joy. Epilogue. Success. Redefined 6 months after their wedding, the mansion was completely transformed. Elias and Aurora were now running a foundation to support families with children needing cardiological treatment, turning their personal trial into a mission to help others. One evening, as Ben played happily in the living room, Elias watched him. 2 years ago, I believed success was accumulating real estate and contracts, he told Aurora, holding her close. Now, I know that true success is this conversation, this moment, the sound of Ben's laugh when I come home. Aurora smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. I think the difference between our first marriage and this one is not that we are perfect, but that we are real. We finally saw each other imperfectly and chose to grow together. Elias Thorne, the entrepreneur who once defined success by the size of his bank account, now measured it by the depth of his family's happiness. The arrogant billionaire found his true worth, not in the world he built, but in the family he almost lost. Thank you for watching. If this story of transformation and second chances touched your heart, hit the like button, share it with a friend, and let us know in the comments below. What is your definition of true success? We'll see you in the next video. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories. The next chapter. Building a legacy of heart. The narrative continues 6 months after the wedding, focusing on their new life and foundation. Chapter 7. The Philanthropic Empire. Elias Thorne's professional life had undergone a transformation as radical as his personal one. He hadn't abandoned his company, Thorne Real Estate, but he had restructured it entirely. He appointed his sister, Vivian, as Chief Operating Officer, COO, to manage the day-to-day operations, giving her the authority he once guarded fiercely. His focus was now dedicated to high-impact, sustainable projects, and, most importantly, the Ben Vance Thorne Foundation. The foundation, established in honor of their son's miraculous birth and Aurora's resilience, was designed to cover the specialized cardiological care for children from low-income families and provide emotional support for their parents. One crisp spring morning, Elias and Aurora sat in their newly designed foundation office, a bright, welcoming space, contrasting sharply with Elias's old mahogany-clad corporate headquarters. The fundraising gala next month is projected to exceed last year's target by 40%, Elias announced, running a hand through his hair. He looked tired, but the satisfaction in his eyes was palpable. We'll be able to finance a full wing renovation at the St. Jude's Medical Center, right where we first met again. Aurora smiled, sipping her herbal tea. She had taken on the role of the foundation's director of outreach, using her deep empathy to connect with families. It's remarkable, Elias. You're using your business acumen not to build another tower, but to build hope. You taught me that the best ROI isn't measured in dollars, but in changed lives, he replied, reaching across the desk to touch her hand. Suddenly, Ben, now 2 years old and a whirlwind of energy, burst into the office, dragging a stuffed elephant. "Daddy, Mommy, elephant!" Elias immediately dropped his pen and scooped up his son. This was the new normal, business and family seamlessly integrated. He had learned that a brief interruption from Ben was more valuable than an hour of uninterrupted meetings. Viewers, Elias's transformation is complete. If you could give him one piece of advice about balancing his new foundation work with being a devoted dad. What would it be? Let us know in the comments. Chapter 8. The Question of Forever. As the foundation thrived, so did Elias and Aurora's relationship. Their second wedding anniversary was approaching, and they were planning a quiet trip, just the two of them, to their cabin retreat in the Adirondacks. A few weeks before the trip, Aurora had an appointment with her cardiologist, Dr. Lewis. Elias insisted on accompanying her, not out of control, but out of genuine concern. "Mrs. Thorne, your heart is stable, and your stress levels are remarkably low," Dr. Lewis confirmed, reviewing the latest scans. "Whatever Mr. Thorne is doing, keep it up. You're healthier now than you were 5 years ago." Elias let out a silent breath of relief. Then, Aurora asked the question she had been holding on to for months. "Dr. Lewis, given my condition and the complications with Ben's pregnancy, is it absolutely impossible for us to have another child?" Elias stiffened, his eyes wide. This was a dream they had both given up on long ago. Dr. Lewis tapped his pen against the pad thoughtfully. "Medically, the odds are still stacked against you, Aurora. It would be high risk, but I cannot say it's impossible. Your overall health and emotional stability are vastly improved. The real question is, after everything you went through, are you willing to risk it again?" That evening, back in their Chicago home, they sat on the bench under the olive tree, watching the sunset. "You asked the doctor about another baby," Elias said softly, holding her close. "Yes," Aurora whispered. "Seeing Ben grow, watching you become the father I always knew you could be. It brings back the longing. But it terrifies me, Elias. I almost didn't make it last time." Elias gently turned her to face him, his gaze serious. "Aurora, my love, I need you to understand something. Ben is the miracle. If we are blessed with another child, it would be wonderful. But if we never have another baby, I am completely whole. You are the center of my life. I will never risk losing you. Never. If we proceed, it has to be with absolute caution and complete acceptance of whatever the outcome may be." "But you always wanted a big family," she reminded him. "I wanted a stable family," he corrected, smiling. "And I have one. But if the universe grants us another surprise, this time we face it together. Every step. Are you ready to consider that journey again?" Aurora looked at the man before her, the one who had traded a corporate empire for a life defined by love, the one who saw her not as a fragile patient, but as an irreplaceable partner. "Yes, Elias," she said, tears in her eyes. "With you by my side, I'm ready to consider anything." Chapter 9. A Glimmer of New Life. The Adirondacks trip was a beautiful, quiet escape. They left the mobile phones behind and spent their days hiking and talking, reconnecting as the young, passionate couple they once were. Upon their return, they consulted Dr. Lewis again, agreeing on a meticulous, highly monitored plan. Life went back to its normal, busy rhythm. The foundation, Ben's playdates, family dinners with Mrs. Gable and Vivian. 3 months passed. One Tuesday morning, Elias was preparing for a critical board meeting about the foundation's new hospital wing. He was adjusting his tie when Aurora walked into his dressing room, her face pale. "Elias," she whispered, holding a small test kit in her trembling hand. Elias's carefully composed facade crumbled. He rushed to her side. "Aurora? What is it? Is your heart okay?" She just shook her head, tears forming in her eyes, not of fear, but of profound disbelief. She slowly held out the test. Positive. Elias Thorne, the man who once commanded rooms with a single glance, sank onto the silk ottoman, completely speechless. "It's another miracle, Elias," Aurora said, her voice barely a breath. "Against all odds, again." He looked up at her, seeing not the fragile patient from the hospital entrance 2 years ago, but the strong, loving mother of his son. He lifted his hand to her cheek, tracing the line of her jaw. "Then we will welcome this miracle," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And this time, the world stops for us. We do this together." The next 9 months were marked by intense caution and profound joy. The entire Thorne household rallied around Aurora. Elias's control freak tendencies resurfaced, but in a positive way. He timed Aurora's naps, managed her diet with military precision, and even set up a live feed to her doctor in his office. He delegated more than ever, realizing that some risks were simply not worth taking. Epilogue 2. The legacy is complete. The following year, on a bright, snowy morning, Aurora gave birth to a healthy baby girl at St. Jude's Medical Center, the very place where their second chance began. They named her Hope. Elias stood by the nursery window, gazing at his daughter. He looked over his shoulder at Aurora, who was resting peacefully, and at Ben, now 3, who was pointing at his new sister with a gap-toothed grin. He realized his original dream of building an untouchable empire was small and cold. His real legacy wasn't forged in steel and glass, but in the warmth of his home, the strength of his marriage, and the future he was building for his children. The two-time billionaire smiled. His life was still complex, but it was rich. Rich with love, purpose, and genuine happiness. He finally understood that success isn't about what you acquire, but what you choose to protect and nurture. His empire was complete. It had 2 children, a brave heart, and a foundation built on a love that was stronger the second time around. And there it is. The family is complete. Thank you for following Elias and Aurora's journey of transformation and what? If this powerful ending moved you, please give this video a huge like and subscribe to our channel for more stories that redefine success. We hope you found meaning and inspiration in their second chance. See you next time. Final chapter: the unveiling of true success. The story continues 2 years after the birth of Hope, focusing on the Foundation's climax and Elias's public redemption. Chapter 10. The Hope Wing. 2 years after the miraculous birth of Hope, the Ben Vance Thorne Foundation was preparing for its most significant moment: the grand opening of the Aurora and Hope Wing at St. Jude's Medical Center. This new wing, fully funded by the Foundation, was dedicated entirely to pediatric cardiology and family support. A full-circle moment for Elias and Aurora. Elias, now 57, stood on the stage of the hospital auditorium, looking out at the crowd of doctors, philanthropists, and media. He was no longer the arrogant magnate. His tailored suit now seemed to contain a man comfortable in his own skin, his eyes warm and present. He saw Aurora sitting in the front row, looking radiant and healthy, holding their daughter, Hope, who was now a lively toddler. Ben, 4, sat proudly next to his mother, clutching a small, framed photo of the wing's blueprint. Elias began his address, his voice steady. 24 months ago, I was standing outside this very building, a man entirely consumed by building an empire of concrete and steel. I thought success was a number on a balance sheet. I believed legacy was the height of a skyscraper. He paused, a genuine, humble smile touching his lips. Then, life delivered a beautiful, terrifying surprise right here. My son, Ben, and with him, the revelation of the courage and silent suffering of my wife, Aurora. He turned to his wife. Aurora, my love, you risked everything to bring life into this world. That is the definition of courage. And it taught me that the only buildings worth constructing are those that hold and protect human life. He gestured to the grand entrance of the new wing. This Aurora and Hope wing is not a donation. It is our promise. It is the real estate project of my life. It is built on a foundation of second chances, gratitude, and the profound, humbling discovery that there is nothing more valuable than a heartbeat. especially a tiny one. The applause was thunderous. Viewers, this is the ultimate act of redemption. What do you think is the most impactful lesson Elias has learned about money and power? Comment below. Comment. Chapter 11. Defining Success on Global Television. Following the unveiling, Elias agreed to a rare, in-depth interview with Diane Sterling, one of the most respected business anchors on global television. The interview was broadcast live from his now warm and family-centric Chicago mansion. Diane Sterling, sharp and direct, opened the segment. "Mr. Thorne, your transformation has been the subject of countless articles. You famously rejected a $400 million international deal. The question the business world asks is, are you finished? Has fatherhood made the legendary Elias Thorne soft?" Elias leaned forward, completely relaxed. "Diane, I haven't gone soft. I've simply focused my ambition. I still build. I'm just more selective about what I build. The $400 million deal? It required me to trade 2 years of my children's lives for more money I didn't need. That is not success. That is self-sabotage." "So how do you define success now?" she pressed. Elias looked towards the open French doors, where Aurora and the children were playing in the autumn light. "Success," he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience, "is not having the biggest bank account. It is having the richest moments. Success is being present. It's knowing that when I walk through that door at the end of the day, I am irreplaceable to the people inside." He paused, looking directly into the camera, with a depth of sincerity he'd never possessed in his previous life. "My first empire was cold. My second one is warm. My greatest achievement isn't a building with my name on it, but the health of my wife and the joy in my children's eyes. And I would trade every skyscraper I ever built for 1 more hour on the floor, explaining a merger to a 2-year-old. Do you regret any of the arrogance, the missed years with Aurora?" Diane asked. "Every day," Elias admitted, a shadow of pain crossing his face. "But regret is only useful if it inspires change. My past mistakes gave me the gift of clarity. They taught me that the difference between the first marriage and the second is that this time, we are not trying to be a perfect couple. We are committed to being a real family." Epilogue. The Real Empire. Years later, Elias Thorne stepped down as CEO of Thorne Real Estate, handing the reins entirely to Vivian. He now dedicated his life fully to the foundation and his family. One warm summer evening, Elias and Aurora sat under the centenarian olive tree in their garden, watching Ben, now a bright-eyed boy of 8, teaching his 6-year-old sister Hope how to identify constellations. Aurora leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you ever look back at your old life, Elias?" "Only to remind myself of the lesson," he replied, wrapping an arm around her. "I used to measure my life by its quantity, how many contracts, how many square feet. Now, I measure it by its quality, how deep the love, how present the moments." He kissed the top of her head. "The world thought I was a failure when I prioritized my family over a business deal. They didn't see that I was simply reinvesting in the only asset that truly appreciates, the heart." Elias Thorne, the man who had lost everything only to be gifted a second chance, knew his empire was finally secure. It wasn't built on Wall Street, but on the solid, unbreakable foundation of a family, a true legacy of heart, hope, and an eternally renewed love. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of transformation and redemption. If Elias's story inspired you to focus on what truly matters, please hit the like button, share this powerful conclusion, and don't forget to subscribe. Tell us one thing you're prioritizing over work this week in the comments below. We hope you carry the Thorne family's lesson of love with you. See you next time.